A powerful CEO knocked on a single dad's door. It's time to repay what you owe me. Before we begin the story, don't forget to subscribe and follow Tender Bonds. Like and share our story. The coffee went cold the same way everything did in that house. Quietly, without announcement, while Marcus Webb's back was turned. He stood at the kitchen window in the early dark of a Tuesday morning, watching the sugar maple in the backyard shed its last leaves. October had come in hard this year, with a mean northern wind that stripped the branches early and left the yard looking like something defeated. The leaves gathered in the corner by the fence where the wood had rotted, and he kept meaning to fix it, kept adding it to the list that lived on the back of an envelope on the refrigerator. The list that grew longer in the way that lists do when a man is doing the work of two people, and sleeping the thin, vigilant sleep of someone who never fully lets go. The house on Calder Street was not a beautiful house. It had been a practical choice, good school district, manageable mortgage, close enough to his mother that she could come by on the days Marcus drove into the city for the consulting work that paid the bills and hollowed something out in him in equal measure. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a kitchen with a window that faced the backyard maple, and a linoleum floor that curled at one corner no matter how many times he pressed it flat. It was the kind of house that absorbed a life rather than reflected one. 7 years he had lived there. 7 years since he and Danny had carried their boxes up the porch steps, and 6 years and 2 months since he had carried them back down again, alone, except for a 17-month-old boy asleep in a car seat on the lawn. Owen was 7 now. He slept down the hall with the particular ferocity of childhood, arms flung wide, mouth slightly open, a stuffed elephant named Gerald tucked under his chin. Every morning Marcus went in before the alarm and stood in the doorway for a moment that he could not have explained to anyone, stood and looked at his son as though confirming something, as though the sight of the boy breathing quietly was the one fixed point in a world that had developed a habit of moving without warning. On the counter beside the cold coffee sat a small paper crane. Owen had learned origami from a library book 3 weeks ago and had since papered every surface in the house with folded creatures, cranes mostly, but also frogs, a lopsided fish, something that was supposed to be a fox. He left them everywhere the way some children left their shoes or their crumbs. Marcus found them on the bathroom sink, on the stairs, tucked into his work bag as though the boy was sending him off with company. He had not thrown a single one away. They sat on his desk at work in a small congregation by the monitor, and when the consulting work felt most like drowning, Marcus sometimes reached out and touched one, just briefly, just the edge of a wing. He picked up the crane from the counter now and turned it in his fingers. Outside, the maple shook in the wind. The fence needed fixing. The coffee was cold. This was his life, and he had made a kind of peace with it, or not peace exactly, but the durable acceptance of a man who has understood that certain doors close and do not open again. He had dated twice in the years since Danny left. Once a teacher named Renata, whom he had liked very much and who had liked him the same way, thoughtfully, carefully, with a fundamental hesitation on both sides that finally became its own answer. Once a woman named Claire who worked at the brewery downtown and laughed at everything he said, which had felt wonderful for about 6 weeks before he understood that what he needed was not to be laughed with but to be witnessed. Neither had gone past the careful stage. He had not allowed it. There was Owen to consider, he told himself, and the telling was not false. Owen was always to be considered, but it was also not the whole truth. The whole truth was that Marcus Webb had developed, without quite deciding to, a talent for arriving almost, for stopping at the threshold, for being the man who folded a paper crane and set it down and walked away from the window before anything could move him too deeply. He did not know yet that this particular Tuesday was the last morning that would be true. The doorbell rang at 7:42 in the morning, which was wrong in the particular way that early morning doorbells are always wrong. They carry weather with them, a pressure change that makes the chest tight before the mind has caught up. Marcus had been getting Owen's breakfast together, cutting the crusts off toast, because Owen was going through a phase about crusts that Marcus had decided was not worth the battle, and the bell cut through the ordinary noise of the morning like something sharp through something soft. He set the knife down. Owen looked up from his drawing at the table. "Who's that?" Owen said. "Don't know, bud." "Maybe it's Gerald's family," Owen said, with complete seriousness, tucking the stuffed elephant more securely under his arm. Marcus wiped his hands on the dish towel and went to the door. She was standing on his porch with her hands still raised from the bell, in a charcoal coat that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment, her dark hair pulled back with the kind of careless precision that took a great deal of effort to achieve. She was taller than he remembered. Or maybe it was the coat, or the way she stood, perfectly still and utterly composed, the way people are when they have learned to show nothing in the first seconds of anything. Nadia Reyes. He had not seen her in 8 years. 8 years, and here she was on his porch in October with the cold morning light on her face, and all the things he might have said arranged themselves uselessly in his throat. She looked at him, the way you look at something you have been trying to remember the exact shape of. "Marcus," she said. His name in her voice did something to the morning. He couldn't have said what. "Nadia," the word came out steadier than he felt. He stopped, started again. "It's early." The smallest possible thing happened at the corner of her mouth. "I know, I'm sorry." She wasn't sorry, he could see that, not in a cold way, just in the way of someone for whom time operates as a resource to be deployed rather than experienced. "I need to talk to you. I would have called, but—" "You don't have my number." "I don't have your number." They looked at each other. 8 years hung between them like weather, not hostile, exactly, but present, and requiring acknowledgement before anyone could move forward. "Come in," he said. The kitchen caught her, he watched it happen. She stepped in and took in the paper cranes, the curling linoleum, the crayon drawings held to the refrigerator by magnets shaped like state capitals, the whole dense, lived-in evidence of his life, and something moved through her expression that she collected quickly. Owen looked up from his toast. "This is my son," Marcus said. "Owen, this is an old friend of mine. Her name is Nadia." "Hi," Owen said, then, "do you want some toast? Dad cuts the crusts off." "Owen." "I would love some," Nadia said. She sat down at his kitchen table. Nadia Reyes, CEO of Reyes Capital, whose name appeared in Forbes lists, and whose face had been on the cover of 3 different business magazines in the last 2 years, sat down at his kitchen table and accepted a piece of crustless toast from a 7-year-old boy who immediately began explaining the structural challenges of origami foxes. Marcus stood at the counter and watched, and felt something move through him that he could not name, and was almost afraid to. After Owen had been dispatched to brush his teeth, Nadia wrapped both hands around the mug of coffee Marcus had placed in front of her and looked at him directly. "The Hargrove loan," she said. He nodded. He had known it was coming, had known since the moment he opened the door, had known the way you know weather before it arrives. 8 years ago, Marcus had been 27 and 3 months into launching his first company, a small logistics software firm that was burning through its runway faster than projected. He had needed $40,000 to make it to the next funding round. The bank had said no. His family had said no. Nadia Reyes, who had been his closest friend for 3 years and who had just received her first real return on her own early investment portfolio, had said yes. No paperwork. No terms. Just yes, because they had been, for a time, the kind of friends who believed in each other with a ferocity that you only manage before the world teaches you to be careful. 3 months later, the funding round had fallen through. The company had folded. And then Danny had announced she was pregnant, and Marcus had done what seemed necessary, put everything into being present for the thing that mattered most, found the consulting work, bought the house on Calder Street, built the life that fit. He had always meant to repay Nadia. He had always been about to. "I know," he said. It's been on my mind, I want you to know that. I don't have it all at once, but I can. That's not why I'm here. He stopped. She looked at the coffee in her hands. When she looked back up, something in her had shifted, some infinitesimal rearrangement, a softening at the edges that she was clearly not entirely comfortable with. I'm here because I've been thinking about what I'm owed, she said, and the math doesn't work out to money. She stayed longer than she had planned. He could see that in the way she glanced at her watch at 8:15, then didn't look again. After Owen was on the school bus, standing at the end of the driveway in his blue coat, turning back to wave with the fierce repetitive commitment that children bring to goodbyes, they stayed at the kitchen table. The morning opened up around them, wider and quieter. She told him about the company, which had grown from the boutique firm she'd been building when they knew each other into something that managed $8 billion in assets and had offices in 4 cities. She said it without pride, or rather with the complicated absence of pride that comes from achieving the thing you aimed for and finding it weighs differently in the hand than it did in the mind. He told her about Owen, about the origami phase and the Gerald the Elephant phase before that, and the phase where Owen had been convinced for about 2 months that the family needed a goat. He told her about the consulting work, careful, analytical work that he was genuinely good at, and that felt like solving other people's problems while his own sat in a drawer. They did not talk about Danny. They did not talk about the years between them. The gap was there, 8 years of separate weather, and by unspoken agreement they sat on either side of it and spoke carefully across. At 9:30 she said she had a conference call. He walked her to the door. On the porch, with the October morning fully arrived and the maple throwing its cold shadow across the lawn, she turned to him. "The fence needs fixing," she said. He looked at the rotting corner. "I know. I used to build things," she said. It landed oddly, like a fact she hadn't meant to say out loud, like something she had taken out of a drawer to look at privately and found herself suddenly holding in public. He looked at her. "In high school," she said, "my grandfather had a workshop. I was good at it." She paused. "I haven't thought about that in years." She walked down the porch steps. At the bottom she turned back, and the light caught her face, and Marcus felt the full weight of 8 years compressing into something he could neither hold nor put down. "I'll come back Saturday," she said. It was not quite a question. "Okay," he said. She walked to the black car waiting at the curb, and he stood on the porch and watched until the car turned the corner, and then he stood there a little longer in the cold, holding the nothing that was also something. She came on Saturday with a bag from the hardware store. He saw her from the kitchen window. She had parked her own car this time, a sensible gray thing that surprised him somehow, and she was coming up the walk carrying a brown paper bag and wearing jeans and a flannel-lined canvas jacket that looked like it had seen actual use. He felt something shift in him with the ease and wrongness of a familiar bone. They worked on the fence for 3 hours while Owen provided running commentary from the porch steps and periodically brought them things he considered necessary. A juice box for Marcus, a drawing of the fence they were supposed to be building as compared to the fence as it was, a paper crane that he placed gravely on the fence post and announced was a good luck crane. Nadia held the post while Marcus hammered, and the work made its own language between them, the wordless communication of 2 people learning each other's physical grammar. She was precise. She didn't fill silence. When she didn't know something, she said so plainly, and when she had a better idea, she said that plainly too, and Marcus found himself thinking that she was exactly the same as he remembered her and entirely different, the way a room is the same room with new light in it. At noon, Owen announced he was hungry with the sovereign certainty of a child who considers hunger a public emergency, and they went inside, and Nadia made grilled cheese sandwiches with the focused efficiency of someone who had identified the problem and was applying a solution. Owen watched her work with an expression of pure scientific appraisal. You cut the crusts off, he observed. I like the soft part best, she said. Owen considered this. Dad says the crust is where the vitamins are. Your dad might be making that up, she said. Dad, Owen said immediately, are you making that up? Marcus put his hands up. I have no comment. Owen turned to Nadia with the delight of the wronged party receiving unexpected vindication. He makes stuff up sometimes. He told me there's a law against putting ketchup on scrambled eggs. There should be, Marcus said. Dad. There really should be, Owen. Nadia laughed, a real one, not managed, rising up from somewhere unguarded, and Marcus felt it like weather, like something the room had needed. They sat at the table together, the three of them, and the afternoon light came through the window and lay across the paper cranes and the crayon drawings in Owen's juice box, and something grew in that light that none of them named but all of them could feel, the tentative warm pressure of a shape that could become a life, if they weren't careful, if they let it. He drove her to her car at 4. Owen waved from the window. Next Saturday, she said. The fence isn't done, he agreed. No, she looked at him, it isn't. She drove away and Marcus stood on the porch in the cooling late afternoon and understood that he was in danger, the specific, welcome, terrifying danger of wanting something again. The weeks that followed were made of Saturdays. They finished the fence. Then there was a weekend where she came and they raked the leaves together, Owen leaping into each pile with a screaming devotion that eventually persuaded Nadia to jump in too, in her canvas jacket, with leaves in her hair, and the expression on her face in that moment. Not just happiness, but something more undefended, something that looked like relief. That was the moment Marcus understood what it had cost her to come to his door that Tuesday morning. She had not come for the money. She had come because she had reached the summit of everything she had aimed for, and found herself standing there alone with clear sight lines in every direction, and no one to show it to. They spoke on the phone between Saturdays. Not every night. They were careful, both of them, the kind of careful that looks like restraint but is really fear, but often enough that he began to hear her voice as something the day needed, the way a room needs a window. She told him that she had grown up in San Antonio, the daughter of immigrants who had arrived with very little and built something solid, who had taught her by example that the building was everything, which was true, and had also left her unable to stop. She told him about her apartment in the city, beautiful, curated, silent. She said the word silent, and something moved through her voice that she moved past quickly. He told her that he had been afraid, in the year after Danny left, that what he'd lost was not just a partner but some central functioning thing, some capacity for openness that you only get one of. He said it simply, and then the phone was quiet for a moment that contained the weight of everything he had not said for 6 years. I know that fear, she said. I know you do, he said. Neither of them said anything for a moment. The phone connection carried the sound of her breathing, his breathing, the ordinary intimacy of two people awake in the dark at the same time. Marcus, she said. Yeah. The $40,000. Nadia. Was the best $40,000 of my life, she said. I need you to know that, not because the company failed, the company failing had nothing to do with you, but because you were, she paused. The pause was the kind that has something real at the bottom of it. Because you were the first person who ever needed something from me and I was glad to give it, not as a transaction, just glad. He sat with that. Come to dinner, he said. Not Saturday, Thursday, I'll cook. I didn't know you cooked. I've learned a lot of things in 8 years. The Thursday dinner was where he made the mistake. He had cooked carefully, a braised short rib that he had practiced twice that week, Owen serving as quality control with the focused professionalism of a 7-year-old who takes his responsibilities seriously. The kitchen was warm and the table was set, and Owen had placed a paper crane at Nadia's setting, which he had decreed was now official, and Marcus had opened a bottle of wine, and the evening was the best thing he had walked into in longer than he could honestly remember. Dinner was easy in the way that some evenings are, not effortless, because nothing real is effortless, but flowing, the conversation moving the way water moves over familiar ground. Owen told Nadia about his class project on the water cycle, with the total narrative commitment of a child who believes his listener has been waiting their whole life to hear this particular information. Nadia listened with her full attention, asking questions that were genuine, not performed, and Owen bloomed under it the way he did with all real interest, his hands moving faster, his voice rising. After Owen was in bed, Marcus doing the full ritual, 3 stories and the glass of water, and the precise arrangement of Gerald and the blanket folded just so. He came back to the kitchen and found Nadia standing at the counter with her wine glass, looking at the paper cranes. "He's extraordinary," she said. "He is," Marcus poured his own glass. "He's the best thing I've ever made." She looked at him then, and in her eyes was something open and unguarded and a little frightened, and he moved without thinking, or rather thinking too quickly, the mind leaping ahead of where they actually were, and kissed her. She kissed him back, one breath too. Then she stepped back. Not harshly, just back just the distance of a single step, but he felt it like a physical thing, felt the step as judgment, as withdrawal, as the polite closing of a door that he had pushed too hard. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't," she said. "Don't apologize." But her voice had shifted, had found a register that was controlled and measured, the voice he imagined she used in boardrooms, and the kitchen that had been warm and full was now neither. "I misread." "You didn't misread anything," she said quietly to the cranes. "That's what makes it." She stopped. She set her glass on the counter and got her coat. At the door she paused. "I need some time," she said. I'm not saying no, I just need." The sentence had no end. She looked at him, and in the looking was everything she could not yet put in words. "I know," he said. She drove away, and Marcus stood at the kitchen window and looked at the maple and the fence they had fixed together. And the cold night air came through the gap at the sill, and he let it, because something in him needed to be reminded of what outside felt like. He did not call her. The first Saturday came and he looked at his phone and didn't call her. The second Saturday he took Owen to a pumpkin patch and came home in the afternoon with dirt on his jeans and Owen asleep in the car, and he sat in the driveway for a long time. He looked at the fixed fence and thought about her hands on the post, steady and precise, holding it plumb while he nailed the boards. Owen woke and looked at him from the back seat. "Are we going in?" Owen said. "Yeah, Bud, we're going in." He carried Owen inside. The boy was too old for this, but permitted it with the grace of someone doing a favor, and put him on the couch with Gerald and a blanket and stood in the kitchen in the early dark. The paper crane stood on the counter. He was afraid. That was the whole truth, and he was done being artful about it. He was afraid that he had finally stopped arriving almost, had finally let something matter, and that it was going to cost him exactly the way he'd always known it would. He picked up his phone. He put it down. He picked it up again. He texted her, "I'm not going anywhere. Whenever you're ready. Or if you're not, that's true too. But I wanted you to know the door's not closed on my end." He set the phone down and went to check on Owen and came back and did not look at the phone for 20 minutes, which was the longest 20 minutes of that particular year. Then he looked. I know she had written, "I'm coming Saturday." She knocked on Saturday at 9 in the morning. He opened the door before she could ring the bell. They stood facing each other in the October cold. A different October now. November nearly arrived, the maple fully bare, and the sky a pressed gray that held the promise of the first real cold. She had not worn the charcoal coat. She was in the canvas jacket, the flannel-lined one, and she was holding something, he saw it then, a paper crane. A careful, precise one, sharper than Owen's, the wings properly angled. I found a tutorial, she said. It took me 4 tries. He looked at the crane in her hand. She held it out. He took it. It was warm from her palm. I don't know how to do this well, she said. I know how to build things, and I know how to protect things, and I know how to run from things very efficiently and for a very long time. A breath. I'm not running. I know, he said. I was scared, she said, and I handled it. You handled it like a person who was scared, he said. That's allowed. She looked at him. Her eyes were full of something he recognized because he had been carrying the same thing, the complicated human weight of wanting badly something you are not sure you deserve. Owen appeared at Marcus's elbow, materializing as he did, sudden and total. Nadia, he said, with the flat satisfaction of someone whose prediction has been confirmed, I made you something. He held up a paper crane, slightly asymmetrical, one wing higher than the other. It's a flying one. The wing is up because it's going. Nadia crouched down to Owen's level. She took the crane from him with both hands, deliberately, the way you take something precious, and she looked at it for a moment that held more than the moment could technically contain. It's the best one I've ever seen, she said. Owen assessed her sincerity with the unsparing clarity of childhood, found it adequate, and nodded. I know, he said. I'll make Gerald one so they can be friends. He turned and went back inside with the completeness of someone whose business is finished. Nadia stood up. Marcus held her crane. She held Owen's. The maple stood bare in the yard above the fence they had built together, and the cold November morning held them both, and neither of them moved toward the other quickly, because this was not that kind of story. This was the other kind, the slow and earned kind, the kind where two people look at each other with clear eyes and all their damage showing and say, yes, still this, you. The fence held up, she said quietly. It did. Good work. Couldn't have done it alone, he said. She looked at him. He looked at her. The cranes were in their hands, his crisp and new, hers slightly lopsided and entirely real, and between them was the morning and the maple and every careful step they had taken, and every door neither of them had fully walked through until right now. Come in, he said, the coffee's hot. And she did.